Good morning, everyone. My name's Ian Hunt. I'm the Chief Experience Officer at Rakes. I'm delighted to welcome you to our next installment of the Growth Series for March. Over halfway through Ramadan now, so I hope everyone's enjoying the month and it's going well for you. For those of you who haven't been to a Growth Series before, we started these around 18 months ago with a real vision and plan of seeing how we could support businesses of all types, from small to large, to start successfully, start fast, grow, succeed, and scale. And we've been working through feedback from everyone on what are the sort of topics different people want to see that could help them be as successful as possible. But before we get going, because this is the first webinar we've done, having done many face-to-face, can I see a show of hands for people who have been to a growth series before? You should be able to see that at the bottom of your screen. Okay, good. We have a few, but a lot of first timers as well, which we're delighted about. We're conscious that not everyone can travel up to Ras Al Khaimah for such sessions. So thank you for joining, and welcome your feedback at the end if you found it useful, and we'll hope to keep running the webinars in the future. But today, as I mentioned, is around the AI playbook for business leaders. And look, we came up with this concept because I myself sat back, about 12, 18 months ago and said, I've heard all this AI business. There's a lot of hype about it, but what does it actually mean for me? What does it mean for my business? And how, as a leader, can I think about how to deploy this to myself and for my team to get value in terms of efficiency and growth? And obviously at the start, it can feel like a bit of a scary step. You may be a techie, you may not be. Really, you just need some support of how to get going. And this partnership with Koshima really came about by that. I engaged with Rob and Carlo and said, talk to me. What does this mean? What can it do for my business? Everything from key accounts to customer service to renewals, all across the spectrum, from front office to back office. And within our business, we've been able to really effectively deploy changes that have saved us huge amount of time and helped support our growth. And we felt it's too good to keep internally and something that we needed to share. So that's what today is about. It's targeted at business leaders, and you're very lucky to have Carlo Pepe and Rob Hayes, the owners of Koshima, absolutely brilliant guys, true experts in the world of AI. But what's great about Rob and Carlo is they can really bring it down to a level that anyone can understand, but also then help you iterate and advance quickly. So we're happy to have them here today. For anyone else who hasn't seen before, we have our Compass website. All of our events that we run, whether they're webinars or face-to-face, covering everything from our growth series to our events around tax to our business networking that we do at our Compass Center. You can find it at compass.rakes.com/events. So I encourage you to look there. But without further ado, I won't take any more of your... Oh, sorry. We have 2 other events coming up over the next couple of months, but we'll run these every single month for the year. So in April, it's more of a sales focus around how you close the deal. So those proven sales techniques to drive growth. So really, how do you clinch that and close it? And then on May, we're looking at mastering financial management. So how do you manage your business better, particularly for SMEs? So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Carlo and Rob, and I hope you get a lot of value from the session.
Hi, welcome. My name's Carlo Pepe. I'm one of the co-founders at Koshima, leading our consulting area of the business.
Rob Hayes, the other co-founder of Koshima, leading our AI enablement side of our business.
So Koshima is an AI business consultancy. A lot of big words. What does that actually mean? We help organizations in planning their journey, progressing and accelerating through their journey with AI. There's a lot of hype in the market. AI has been around for a long time, but generative AI in the last few years has really turbocharged the hype, and there's a lot of confusion in the market. So we set up Koshima at the beginning of 2024 to remove that noise, to help organizations in a calm and structured and effective way of adopting AI by understanding where and why and how in their business AI can be a real value. So today with the AI Playbook for Leaders, we're going to concentrate on three main areas. So the first will be the three pillars of AI in business. These are an important progression through the various different areas of your organization to use AI in the right place. We'll take you through strategic frameworks. So a proprietary framework from Koshima, as well as an industry standard framework, which we've adapted to be more effective for artificial intelligence. And we'll take you through workforce productivity, which is my personally favorite area of turbocharging the workforce. So we'll kick off providing you clarity on AI adoption by taking you through the three pillars of AI in business.
I think it's also very clear to point out it's not a one-size-fits-all. There is no kind of answer. There's no silver bullet that just exists that everyone can go and move to tomorrow. The big key piece for us is identifying what's right for your business, your organization. It's not the same answer for everybody. So a lot of times when we're in with customers, we're in with clients, and they talk about, oh, it would be great if it could do this, or I've seen this is what I want. That's a kind of nice way to get yourself interested in it, but it's not necessarily identifying the right areas of your organization where it can help you. And for us, that is the key starting point to any of this.
Yeah. There's also a temptation, especially with the hype curve at the moment. If I look on my LinkedIn feed, I mean, I could be forgiven for thinking that there's only AI in the world, there's nothing else. But that's just the algorithm feeding myself. But this algorithm feeding means that the hype becomes hyper hype, and there's a lack of clarity. People talk about the future with AI, but actually the AI is the now. It's been around, like I say, since 1950s, and the advent of generative AI has meant that AI is accessible to each of us as individuals and within our control as organizations. So we need to get around that hype. And it's not just about technology. It's about how you use AI to drive value, to drive efficiency, and ultimately gain a competitive advantage. So we'll take you through the three pillars of AI in business. Now, the first is workforce productivity. What we mean by workforce productivity are tools that help employees work faster, smarter, more effectively, more efficiently, and ultimately more productive. Now, this area is the first area for organizations to look at when considering AI in their organization. It focuses on improving departmental operations, the workflows, and even some decision-making at an individual employee level. We all have those tasks that involve a lot of work in order to achieve the task. A lot of that is repetitive. And so enhancing workforce productivity with the right tools for the right use enables us to remove the burden of the necessary work we need to do to achieve a task.
It also allows us as individuals to get on with the more creative side of our work, the more strategic side of our work. So as Carlo mentioned, a lot of the kind of initial, those low-hanging fruit use cases when it comes into productivity, especially the workforce productivity element, is around using AI tools to help augment your existing workforce, where the tools begin to take away those repetitive, boring, administrative, heavy jobs, allowing your team to free up more time to be more creative, to be more strategic in the day-to-day of their job, and to get onto those items on those to-do lists that they never really get to because they're stuck in the kind of heavy administrative pieces. And that's really when I look at some of the work we do on the enablement side, that's where we see a lot of customers and a lot of people really getting the big advantages of, okay, there's these tools that exist already. We're looking at them as an organization, or if we take something like ChatGPT, sorry, Carol, I've mentioned it already, but if we take something like ChatGPT, a lot of people are already using it, right? Whether the organization has already signed it off or whether they're still trying to figure out what they can do, people are using these tools already to try and help them get better and get more efficient at their work. But one of the biggest problems we see in that space is they're not using the tools efficiently, which as a result is actually having a knock-on effect on their productivity. They're not getting the expected results. They're not getting the expected outcomes. And also they're bringing security issues into your organization. We're not going to talk too much about the security side of it right now. It's all about the productivity piece, but enabling and upskilling your workforce to be able to get the most out of these tools is very much that kind of first starting pillar.
Yeah, we'll go into workforce productivity a little later, but this is the first place for businesses to look at. This is the low-hanging fruit. Organizations are made up of the sum of the people that work within them, and so this is the logical first step. The next step is business process optimization. You may have heard of an acronym called BPO, and this is business process optimization. And what this is this moving one step lower than the workforce tasks, activities, and workflows. And we're now looking at team departmental, and functional processes. This is the next logical step deeper into the organization. Gets a little more tricky than workforce productivity, but certainly it's a logical progression, because when you're looking at optimizing the workforce in the way that they go about their tasks and activities, you then come with business processes and an optimized workforce going through their tasks and activities in a very quick, efficient, and productive manner will then start understanding where further bottlenecks are. And those next bottlenecks are going to be obvious, in the processes that those teams and departments go through. So that's the next level, is business process optimization. Anything to add there?
Yeah, no. I think it's that piece around the first step is make the person empowered within their role, within what they can do that just affects themselves, but helping the wider organization. Onto the business process, where then start looking at processes that are more function-wide, not just to a specific person.
Yeah. And then we have the last pillar, which is core business optimization. Now, these are the very fundamental systems that power a business. And actually working in this area is a bit like open heart surgery. Imagine, and we're going to give you just some examples here of each of the three pillars, but I'm going to continue with core business optimization. Imagine flight scheduling for an airline, or imagine fraud detection for a bank or for an insurance company. Quite often, and this is a trap that organizations fall into, is that organizations focus their attention here first. And this is like open heart surgery. Get this wrong, and the consequences are very high profile.
Dire.
Dire is the word that I was going to use, but we like calming things down a little bit. So this is the wrong place to start. It's definitely a massive value add to an organization. It's an area that AI has been helping for decades, and it's certainly an area that every organization needs to look at, but it's definitely not the first place.
We also see at the moment a lot of I suppose this kind of fear piece of where do I start, what do I do? Can I trust the technology? So as we said at the very start, it's not necessarily a technology conversation, but it's based in technology. So you've got a lot of people still got this, I suppose, trust issue that exists. By attacking the pillars in the way that we have structured them here in front of you, you get to build momentum and trust in the technology, in the solutions that you're putting into your business, in the ability for your organization to transform before you start going into the open heart surgery piece. So you get to pick up and learn from some of the initial mistakes in the less kind of key areas of the organization make sure everything is running smoothly, and then go for the big operation, the big transformation.
So organizations that don't adopt in this right level of sequence are really hampering and hindering their ability to drive innovation, to drive confidence within an organization with AI. The last pillar, these are really long-term projects, and organizations can really get bored and you can lose interest. And sometimes these projects go on for a long time, so they go over multiple tenures of people. The first place to start is with your employees. And imagine this is like a circle that closes in then on the core open heart surgery. So we'll now go to workforce productivity. This is my favorite area. This is where I believe the biggest bang for your buck is. This is where work starts becoming more enjoyable for people. And this hits to the first pillar, workforce productivity. So here we're looking at tools for fast, effective, and a productive workforce. Now, common misconception is we'll give our teams tools, we'll let them use ChatGPT, we will give them Microsoft CoPilot 365, and we're going to benefit from some magic. And that's just not the reality. And I believe that if we're all honest with ourselves, we can understand before we even progress through this next section as to why that's the case. What's required is education and enablement. And what this gives is empowerment to the employees that they require to drive the adoption and the productivity. So there are three main approaches that we see in the market, and our focus is predominantly UAE. These are three approaches that we commonly see. The first is bring your own tool, and then it's an organization. For the next, it's an organization providing tools and a level of training. And then the last, which is the most effective, is an organization providing tools and then enablement to the workforce.
So if we look at bring your own tool, so what do we mean when we say bring your own tool? Bring your own tool means the workforce themselves, the employees, the people in the organization are using tools that they've signed up for, maybe outside of work, but they're using it in their working capacity. They're using it to help them with their day-to-day roles. They're trying to become more efficient themselves, but without necessarily having the full backing, support, or buy-in from the organization. So that's a little bit like the kind of the tail leading the dog, to coin that phrase. But where this also begins to go wrong is it then means there's no training or structured guidance. So you now have everybody doing something on their own. They're using potentially different tools. We've mentioned ChatGPT, we've mentioned Microsoft CoPilot, you've got Gemini, you've got Claude, you've got Gamma, you've got a plethora of tools that help you with all different parts of your day-to-day work that exist. So there's no consistency across that, but there's also no training. The workforce then struggle how to understand how to apply. So if they're bringing these tools in themselves, it means they're also doing the learning on themselves. So they're potentially learning from YouTube videos, they're learning from maybe some online, they're learning from LinkedIn posts that say, here's the top 100 prompts that I could not live without, okay? I'll tell you already, that doesn't work. But that's how they're bringing these tools in. So maybe we're beginning to see a little bit of productivity improvement, but actually that's only scratching the surface. And they're only maybe hitting one part of their role. We said we're not going to dive much into the security and privacy concerns, but it is definitely a concern. So people, the amount of times we go into organizations and we're very simple, a ChatGPT conversation. It's going, okay, have you uploaded data into this? Yes. Is this company specific? Is this IP related data? Maybe. Okay. Do you know that ChatGPT uses that for training if you don't have that setting switched off? And to switch that setting off, you need to be on the paid for version. But a lot of people are still using the free version, just as an example. So, and that's one piece of awareness that we see that a lot of people don't understand. And you kind of begin to look at going, okay, well, if we know where people are using these tools, but we're not making them aware of the concerns and risks, then who is really kind of at fault for this? How do we need to fix this? And it is about going, okay, we need as an organization, we need to come with policies, but we need to make them aware. We need to help enable them on these tools to make sure that actually we're protecting ourselves, not just making them more efficient. And it's also then you've got limited oversight. As I said, you don't know what tools people are using. You don't know what information they're putting in. So that's going to be an absolute nightmare to manage. But that's what we're seeing more of coming in at the moment of this bring your own tool initiative.
It's an important point, actually, you raised, that let's say someone's using a free version of any of the tools or a paid version and they're not aware of the data security. They upload something and that causes the outcome of a lack of compliance. Who's at fault there? Is it the employee or is it the organization? If the organization doesn't have a policy around the use of AI by the employees, and there's some sort of litigation or something like that, this is a gray area. Certainly not a good place to be. The next is an organization has done a tool or a number of tools to the employees, and they provided training. If an organization goes through internal discussions and a decision-making process to implement an industry standard leading tool like Microsoft CoPilot 365, which is a great tool for the Microsoft Office 365 suite of software, and then they provide tool training, what actually happens in that tool training is that your employees are shown how to use Microsoft CoPilot 365. On the surface of it, it sounds really good. But actually what happens then is the workforce scratch their head and they struggle to understand how to apply the tool into their day-to-day tasks. And they think to themselves, well, I remember that I was shown how to do a calculation, but they're not shown how to do the right calculation, or how to perform the right bit of research, or how to perform various tasks in the tool within the context of their role. So they lack context, and this results in low confidence. Low confidence then results in low adoption. And this is just a downward spiral, and it slows down and halts progress. It stifles growth and it stifles innovation. And as Koshima, we've seen this firsthand. Actually, when we first started, we were partnering with a training organization and we were delivering training on their behalf. And this training was awareness, which is great, and some tool-based training. But over a very short period of time, we started modifying this to actually give context of the tools within the roles. And that gave birth really to our contextualized enablement, which we're now going to speak to you about. And this is the third approach and the most effective approach.
So when we say provide tools and enablement, what's the difference between enablement and training? For us, the difference is it's a kind of subtle play on words, but it's a key difference. It's not about training you how to use a tool. It's about enabling you to use a tool in your day-to-day. So understanding what does your day-to-day look like, what are the workflows you currently do, what are the processes you currently do, what is those heavy administrative workloads where these tools are going to be able to assist you, and then actually helping you bridge the gap between how do I use these tools to help me in this space? What does it look like for me? And that is really the key difference between just doing training versus doing enablement. It's making it that contextualized piece. What that then allows your workforce to be able to do is, one, they begin to get a very quicker ROI in terms of they can start the moment they leave an enablement session like that, they can start using it for a workflow that they understand straight away because that's what they've just done in the session, something that's actually very applicable to them, something that they do every day. It gives them confidence to continue to use the tools because they're going, oh, okay, I can actually see results. And I can see what success looks like. I can see what good looks like. This is delivering me the type of results that I expected as helping empower me. that then has a knock-on effect to help drive adoption. So because what that does is that gives people more confidence. It gives them more ability, or it puts them in a more comfortable place to be able to kind of push the boundaries a little bit more of, okay, well, now if I can understand it does this for my day-to-day, can it help me do it here? It helps them to test a little bit more and helps them to push where they actually plan to use it. And that gives you more productivity. And that's that incremental gains that we'll talk about a little bit later on. And it's that cultivating curiosity that really is a big kind of unmeasurable benefit that we see at the start. So when we first started doing these contextualized enablement sessions, the initial productivity gains, the confidence, that's what we were able to very much kind of measure and go, yes, because we can do the surveys afterwards. We can see how much more people are confident in using the tools and in pushing. But it's that curiosity piece that actually was a bit of an eye-opener for us that we didn't expect at the start, but we've now seen across 98% of our customer base when we've trained or when we've done the enablement in this way, that one of the big benefits everyone talks about afterwards is that curiosity for them to explore it in a place where they haven't necessarily done in the enablement sessions. But it's because they've got that confidence from how the enablement has been delivered to them, and they can actually see what good looks like as well versus what they believe good looks like.
It works. Where else can I make it work?
Yeah.
And it's this snowball effect of positivity and confidence and adoption. And as I mentioned a little earlier with the pillars, this pillar then feeds into the next pillars, because the curiosity of mind then turns to processes within an organization rather than workflows of an individual or a team. And this is hugely powerful. So with a structured approach to tools and prioritizing enablement over training, without a doubt, and it's proven, you're able to achieve a greater level of productivity and therefore a greater return, on your investment. Should we move to the strategic frameworks?
Yeah.
Okay, so the next section we promised for you was strategic frameworks. And this all feeds into use cases of AI driven by business needs. This is where we use a structured approach to cut through the noise and the hype that we hear in the market, that we see on our news feeds, our LinkedIn feeds, that we hear in the corridor conversations, that we see with colleagues, with friends, etc. This is a structured approach. And these strategic frameworks play to Pillar 2 and to Pillar 3. Now, just to clear up any jargon, a use case of AI, if you're not aware, is the use or the application of AI for a certain business requirement. It's a use of artificial intelligence. And there are two alarming statistics, one that you can see on the screen and another one I'm going to give you now. So way before generative AI was a thing and it was in our pockets and in our reaches to be able to use, the statistic of 70% of new technology projects fail due to a lack of stakeholder engagement. That's essentially not canvassing the stakeholders who are going to be impacted by the project, not involving them in the project, and therefore things just fall off a cliff. So let's switch that the other way around. That's only 30% of projects are successful. Now, this number is exasperated with AI, and 80% of AI projects now are seen as failing due to misalignment with business needs. And we fully expect this number to reduce to 70% over the next 2 or 3 years, because the technology will be more mature, the understanding will be at a higher level within organizations, and I think we'll normalize with the previous statistic. But this is what we're seeing at the moment.
I would also add to that, one of the other reasons why that number, that 80% is going to begin to come down, is because more people are coming to sessions like this, right? More people are beginning to realize I can't just buy a tool that I saw on my LinkedIn feed that looks really good, or I've had somebody reach out to me saying they'll transform my HR processes for hiring, or they'll transform my lead generation for my sales team using AI, and actually I've tried to implement it and integrate it, and it's failed. And it's failed because we're back to that point of misalignment with the business needs. So instead of putting the solution first, the answer first, it's focusing on, right, well, what's the problem? What's the question I'm trying to answer? And by coming to sessions like this and taking in that awareness, you're then becoming more educated in yourself to be able to go, okay, this is how I need to take a step back, kind of maybe not get caught up in the hype as much as what we're seeing for a lot of people, and go, okay, how do I approach this strategically? How do I approach this? Because this is my business, to make sure that I will actually get the impact that I expect from this, and that I won't be wasting resources, whether that is time or money.
So now let's take you through 2 strategic frameworks. Maybe some of you will have heard of design thinking. We'll take you through design thinking. We'll also take you through our Koshima time framework, which is an absolute must for us in our consulting practice in order to augment design thinking as a structure. So we'll take you through these 2. So design thinking actually was the outcome, or invented by a Nobel Prize winner, Herbert Simon. And he was the first to mention design think as a way of thinking in a book in the late 60s called The Science of Artificial. Now, design thinking framework is primarily used, or traditionally used, let's say, by luxury goods manufacturers. So if you think of someone like Apple, they will typically use this approach, and it's really a human-centric approach to products. It's made of 5 components, 5 stages. So the first we have is empathize, which is all around a human-centric understanding of users, and our adaptation of that for identifying use cases and justifying use cases is here we're looking to understand goals, objectives, challenges, and missed opportunities within a team, within a department, within an organization. Now, identifying these is one thing, but having a definition brings the reality to what we've identified. It's very well understanding goals and objectives and challenges, but unless you're able to tie that back to the business impact and stakeholder impact, they're essentially meaningless. So the next stage, define, focuses on definition, qualitative and quantitative data to give credibility to the areas that we've identified during the empathize stage.
I would also say the define stage is a great way of checking on your stakeholder alignment. So as you're looking to do a project, maybe there's multiple people, multiple functions that might need to be involved. They're all involved in the empathize stage. That's great. You're getting input from all of them. You're getting the metrics, the stats. You're listening to what they're saying. Here's where the issue is, or here's where the missed opportunity is. And then when you come back and you define your problem statement, or you define your missed opportunity statement, it's a great way to go back and sense check that with all of the stakeholders and go, okay, do you agree with this? Because if 1 or 2 stakeholders don't agree with the statement or don't think it's hitting the mark, then actually that's a way of identifying, okay, maybe we're not on the track that we expected to be on, or we're beginning to already lose some of our stakeholders here because the opportunity we have to find or the problem we have to find, we don't even have alignment on that. So that's a very kind of recursive stage that to make sure you have your stakeholder alignment, everybody needs to be aligned to what that definition becomes when you're taking on any of these projects. And that's where we see a lot of organizations and companies kind of miss that, what is on paper a very, very simple step, but they miss that key step.
And quite often we find ourselves almost as psychiatrists in an organization when we're going through the use case consulting, because it's essentially rare time out for people from the day-to-day to take a step back and look at their business, particularly in this structured approach using defined thinking. So the next step is ideate, and this is essentially taking what we've understood or recognized and identified in empathize with the define to provide definition to that. And then we ideate, we brainstorm as to how AI is able to positively impact and solve for those challenges that we've identified and defined. Design thinking then goes on to prototype, which in the luxury goods circumstances or situations, someone like Apple may have built then a prototype of the new iPhone or of the new iPad. So this is like a physical prototype. Our adaptation for artificial intelligence use cases is now to design at a high level the use case using what we call functional components and the process flow. What do we actually mean here? These are essentially building blocks, Lego blocks of the components that an AI solution is made up of, and then the flow of the process through those functional components. Now, none of this means anything without KPIs being set so that you can evaluate the effectiveness and ensure alignment back to the areas that we've defined against the areas we've identified or that you've identified through empathize.
One of the biggest struggle points we see when we see other organizations go through this, like this is it's an industry standard framework, as Carla mentioned. Loads of companies in the luxury goods space use this. You can do this without Koshima, right? Let's be very clear on that. This is not ours. A key point in there is that how you move from that idea to that prototype. So that prototype piece begins to get a little bit more technical, right? You need to have an understanding of how the technology works. You need to have an understanding of how solutions can be built, what they can do, what is possible from them, and feasibility. Is it actually feasible to kind of execute against these ideas? That's where that prototype stage comes in. And that's very much for a more kind of technical orientated skill set. Whereas the first three phases of this are all business oriented. You don't need to know anything about the technology. You don't need to know how AI systems work, how to build them. You don't need to know what a flow might look like for that. Because the first three, and it's even better if you actually nearly don't know, because then you don't come into these hindered. So the first three sides of this are all around the business side, understanding your business, understanding your organization, understanding the opportunities, and then being able to put metrics and define to them, ideate how they could work again within your realm of your organization. We also find this very good to bring in cross-pollination, so bring in another function. So if we're trying to solve, let's say, for something in HR, maybe bring in someone from procurement, bring in somebody from sales, and you should be able to define and articulate your problem statement or your opportunity statement into them in a way that they can understand. And they may have seen something similar in their own version, in their own function of what they do, to be able to have ideate of how you can solve it. But then as you begin to move on to the last two, that's where your more technical skill set comes in. So it's that balancing act between, yes, you can do this as an organization on your own, but again, that stakeholder piece, realizing who plays the right role at what step in the process is also very key to give this a chance of success.
Yeah, and I would also strongly encourage each of you, if you're not going to be looking at outside help, then definitely look at empathize and define as two steps that you can take internally, and do this as a business conversation within your teams, within your departments, within your functions, with business individuals. Once you've identified in empathize and then put definition to that, you can then internally go to your technology teams, you can go to your technology partners, And you can now lead that conversation by saying, guys, this is what's important to us. This is why it's important. How can you help us? And that gets away from you essentially being taken down a path that might not necessarily be the right path for you. Now, we found that the people, customers of ours, found it quite difficult to or to explain and communicate some of the challenges they've got in their business in a structured way. When we came to the define stage of design thinking, a lot of people we're engaging with, individuals, they talk about the consequence of the problem rather than the actual problem itself when they're articulating. And so to help that, we put together the Koshima time framework. So T stands for time, and this is where we measure how much time is invested in a process or a workflow or a challenge or a missed opportunity. The next is I for investment of resources. How many resources or what resources are you allocating to a goal, objective, challenge, or missed opportunity? The next is money. And this we're looking at if something is cash generating or if it's a cost center. Again, this helps to put definition to the areas that we've understood through the empathize stage. And then lastly, it's experiences. Experiences of internal and external customers, of partners, of anyone who processes goals, objectives, challenges, missed opportunities, and the areas there, who they touch. We quite often say that happy customers spend more and happy employees work harder and dig a little deeper. So these 4 areas that we introduce through the defined stages as 4 currencies are 4 lenses in which we look to provide definition against the areas that we've defined during the empathize stage.
For me, the thing I really love about this framework, and if you're going through the design thinking process yourself, this is a great way, as Carlos said, of going, okay, we've empathized. A lot of where we see the pitfall is people start talking about, well, this is the outcome of the problem versus what's the actual problem. So the time framework is a great way of kind of putting a sense check into that and going, okay, well, we're saying this is the problem, right? Well, what's it costing us? Is it costing us time, money? Is it a bad experience? Or if we're saying this is the opportunity, well, what does that opportunity actually manifest itself into? For me, in this one, the experience is the one that normally a lot of people either don't think of initially or maybe undervalue. Because there's a big consensus at the moment that from a AI adoption piece, it's going to help me make me more efficient, so it's going to help save me time, or it's going to help maybe save me money. Okay, but the experience is, in other words, Carlos said, happy customers spend more, happy employees work harder. But you also get a lot of consistency that comes into play. So me as let's say as an end user, if I'm ringing up support of the support line of a customer, it shouldn't matter who I get on the other side of that. I should get a similar level of response. I should get the same type of answer. I should get the correct answer. It should be solved in a timely fashion. Whereas when we start dealing with people on that side, everyone is a little bit different. But when you begin to augment your workforce by giving them a tool that helps them become more efficient, helps them problem solve, let's say as a customer experience officer or as a customer experience support agent, then they're able to deliver a more consistent experience to the end customers, to your end customers. So that's the one for me that especially when we do a lot of these workshops, that experience one is one that a lot of people talk around, but you have to really kind of point that to them as this is going to be another benefit for you versus the kind of, let's say, the time saving or the money saved or the money generated.
So we'll run through now how this helps in prioritization. So this is where the Koshima time framework and design thinking, two frameworks that you're able to use yourselves, come together. So empathize and define, the two first stages of design thinking. Time framework is used to help these two areas. And then we come up with something that's maybe just as important, really, as identifying and then defining challenges. And that's prioritizing where you're going to put your focus. Now, when you use the time framework, you will have metrics across time, resources, money, and experiences. You'll have metrics now against the areas you've empathized. You've identified through the empathize stage. This means that you can now prioritize the areas that have the greatest impact to the business and therefore provide the greatest value to the business by being solved. This is where, hooking back to cutting through the noise, this is where you have a structured, data-backed approach to where to focus your business, where to focus your efforts, where to lead your technology teams, or where to lead your technology partners. With the prioritization put in place, you can then focus your efforts in ideating and brainstorming as to how to solve those with AI, with the highest priority prioritized. Here you're being more efficient with your time, you're being very structured, you're able to lead that conversation rather than going to IT, your technology teams, and saying, where can you help us? You're asking, how can you help us in these areas, because you've done that due diligence first.
Yep.
So this will help you prioritize solutions based on business impact, and it will help you in executing on strategies that provide measurable business value rather than an experimentation.
It's also extremely important, that step as well, around the feasibility element. So it's great to say, right, we've identified an issue or an area we want to grow. We've got the metrics around it. We know if we can fix this, it's going to, let's say, generate 10,000 dirham of revenue a month for us. That's absolutely fantastic. It's going to cost us 1 million dirham to implement this. Okay. Depending on your ROI schedules, I know for a lot of companies, that's not one that would be considered feasible for them. So again, knowing those metrics and having those numbers, the data behind it to be able to back it up, you're also able to then make a very, very informed feasibility decision when you start going into kind of past that ideate stage and start looking at your prototyping and looking at, right, what are we actually going to build here? What are we going to do? And you start bringing in those more technical teams to go, right, this is what this can look like, or here's a solution that you can buy off the shelf today to solve this.
Rob, I'm glad you scared everyone by saying 1 million dirham, because that's definitely not the approach that we advise you take necessarily. And that feeds into the power of incremental gains. Now, maybe you'll be familiar with this map. This is a map of Japan. The southernmost island of Japan has an island called Koshima Island. And this is our namesake, essentially, as an organization. Now, why Koshima? Well, this is where something called the 100th monkey phenomenon took place. Koshima Island is inhabited by macaque monkeys, not by humans, but these monkeys have been observed since the 1950s. I would encourage you, use your favorite generative AI tool, or use Google if you're still using Google search, and look up the 100th monkey phenomenon. This is all around the power of incremental gains. The monkey you can see here represents a young monkey called Imo, who started a behavior that changed and transformed all of the monkeys on the neighboring islands, as well as Koshima Island. And this really is a story of thinking big, starting small, but starting now. It's important to embrace that early wins build confidence and they create a culture of adoption. When you go through your design thinking, and if you use the time framework and you're identifying areas, you've prioritized those, and you're speaking with your technology teams, you're speaking with third parties, technology vendors, etc. It's important that you start with something manageable. Now, this could be something as simple as a custom ChatGPT or a custom use of Google Gemini, rather than ripping and replacing key infrastructure within your organization. When you start small and you see success, and more importantly, individuals and team members see success, it builds confidence. So starting small and leading towards a vision of thinking big enables you to start on the process. We hear way too much of, yep, we've got 3 use cases, but we need to fix our data before we can do that. That's the wrong approach. Fixing your data should be something you do in tandem, but at later stages. Starting small, get those early wins, and build a confident culture of AI adoption.
But what that also gives you, and go back to one of the stats we gave earlier on, around 80% of projects failing due to stakeholder alignment, stakeholder engagement. When you start small and you start getting some of these wins underneath the table, you're building that confidence. You're then also building momentum and buy-in. So more people in the organization want to get involved with these types of projects because they're seeing its success. Success breeds success. Right? So that starting small piece allows you to also build on that element, get your stakeholders bought in. And instead of them coming with challenges as objections, they're coming in with a mindset of, how do we make this work? How do we adopt this? How can we make this happen? What do we need to do? And that's what's ultimately going to help drive those longer, those bigger term projects and actually help you continue to transform your business.
So I hope that's really been an eye-opener for you. We hope that has put some structure and a path through the chaos and the noise. As part of our partnership with Compass and with Raquez, we're offering a 45-minute call with a Koshima consultant to help you plan and start your AI journey. If you want to take a photo of the QR code, that will take you to a very short registration page, and you can register there, and we can arrange a no obligation 45-minute call just to pave your way through that hype and start your journey or make sense of your existing journey.
There's also, when the follow-up comes after this, there'll also be a link directly to that as well, in case you haven't had a chance to open it now. Q&A? Questions?
Yeah, just a quick one, Carlo, before we move on. I think that there's been a few questions around getting access to the presentation. For all our events we run, they're listed on the compass.raquez.com/events page. You can go into each event, and at the bottom is the presentation attached. Actually, from today's, if you wanted to get into a bit more the practical usage as well, Carlo did a presentation, a live seminar for us on AI on a budget in January on the 29th, and the presentation there that he did looks at things like what tools you can use, how they're relevant for different parts of the organization, from sales to HR, for example. It has a whole list of example use cases as well, which is really useful to kind of get the sort of ideate stage going of their time model. And it also has some really useful links on how to prompt if you're going for the sort of chat GPT or generative AI route. So I encourage you to download and have a look at that. And that some of the basics there can also really get you going on your journey as well.
Oh, we're just playing around with slides here. So, Ian, do we have some questions?
Yeah, there's a few questions that we've tried to answer a few of them along the way. But if you jump into the Q&A, Carlo, there's a few questions Can you provide an example of business industries or departments in which AI tools fail to meet the business needs?
Oh, can we say all of them and none of them at the same time? Is that an answer? It's if I got the question correctly, it's kind of where do they fail to meet?
Yes, that's
I
right.
would say we haven't come across any, whether it's a function, an operation, or workflow yet. We haven't really come across any, whether it's an internal function or the core business, where it's not able to help. It's all around the feasibility and the adoption. So the scale and actually, was it adopted correctly? Was the problem identified correctly in the first place? Are we targeting the right thing? The biggest reason we see for failure is that people look more at the kind of the outcome of what they think the problem is, and then they're trying to solve for that rather than solving for the underlying problem. And that's where, again, the design thinking framework and the Koshima time framework come into play to help you get through that.
I would say totally on agree. That, a common wrong path, let's call it, rather than a failure that we see in organizations is making a snappy decision on tools. So a lot of organizations, if they're doing anything in maybe not a so organized way, but they might look at teams and say, right, what tools everyone using? Obviously, people are using Google Gemini, or they're using Claude, or they're using ChatGPT. Okay, let's get behind ChatGPT. What we often find is that maybe there's a better tool. A lot of organizations are using Microsoft Office 365. And in that example, CoPilot 365 is hugely more powerful than ChatGPT is in that circumstance. So we see that mistake quite a lot.
Carlo, maybe I can ask you a question about that, because I think that's one of the questions in the chat, which is, you know, we're all on a budget. How do I choose the right thing? You know, what's a good resource people can go to for, you know, for certain type of tasks? How do they explore and choose the right tools?
So first, I mean, we've not been asked this question in terms of like, everyone knows like, how can you help us do that? So let me phrase this in something that makes sense to me and is logical. If as an organization you're buried in Microsoft, look to Microsoft. If you're buried in G Suite, look at Google. If you are running your business and the majority of your time is in Salesforce, look at what Salesforce have. A lot of people actually don't look at the obvious areas, such as, well, I'm always in Office, let me see what Microsoft have. They will use something like ChatGPT and constantly be moving data in and out. We see the same with Google. So a very short piece of advice is look at the applications you spend most time in. Look at the vendors of those applications: Office, Microsoft, Google, Salesforce, Oracle, NetSuite, and see what they've got. This is an obvious area for you to look at.
I would add to that.
I think just a quick extension to that before we move on. So obviously a lot of these tools offer free versions. What's your advice to people on the free versus the paid?
Be careful.
Yeah. 2 words. That's it. It's like any trial. It's good if you want to play around it, but make sure you know what you're doing. Make sure you're fully aware of the T's and C's. Make sure you're aware of the data. That is the biggest consideration that we can put into it is know where your data goes. The UAE specifically has some fairly tight data laws. So you want to make sure you're staying in line with them, but also you want to make sure you're protecting your own IP. You're protecting your USPs, you're protecting what makes you special and unique as a company, and it's the data thing. That's probably the biggest risk that comes to the table when using those free tools. So make sure you have awareness around that. Yep.
Ian, I've seen another, so Virendra Sharma. So Koshima is not an implementation company, but industries that we've worked in are local government, we've worked in aviation, We've worked in real estate. There are some really cool use cases actually in real estate, but the sales part of real estate, updating CRMs is a pain for salespeople, and it's often not done very well. So there was a use case that we identified and put forward during our use case consulting, where a salesperson would come out of a meeting, grab their phone, talk to an AI agent, and the AI agent would then structure their notes within the exact fields that they needed to then update the CRM with. So that gave structured notes at the time when it's still fresh in the mind of the salesperson in exactly the way that they could just copy and paste. And then the future vision version of that was to then integrate this into the CRM so that that could auto-populate. Actually, across Ian's team, Ian, we came across some pretty cool use cases. Massive ROIs there, time saved. So you should all be confident that you can find use cases everywhere in your business. Finding use cases isn't the problem. It's identifying which are the right use cases to focus on.
Ian mentioned earlier on the presentation back in January, and if anyone goes to look at that, one of the things you'll see in there is what we call use case wheels. And the use case wheel is by function with a load of use cases in there, just to kind of paint a picture of what is possible. The last count that we have on Koshima, we've just over 1,100 use cases that we've uncovered across different organizations, different customers, different clients, different industries. So again, it's not the use cases that's the problem. They exist. It's what's right for you and your organization and what's actually going to give you the value and the return where it's worth doing the investment.
So I think we're out of time now.
I think we're out of time. Yeah. So thanks everyone for joining. It's a big topic to try and cover in an hour or less than an hour. So please also feedback on if you want more on this topic, more specific details on this topic. There's some other questions in the chat. So in the feedback we put onto the Compass website, we'll try and answer some of these questions as well. But thank you for attending. Please provide a response in the survey. And if you want to engage with the team, scan the barcode and get in touch and see what they might be able to give you in terms of advice or next steps with yourself. So thank you very much.